Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. If you are new here, welcome. It's always so exciting to have new listeners join in. Remember that you can follow on all social media platforms such as your Instagram and Twitter at the Root of the Sci Pod, or on Facebook group at the Root of the Science podcast. Remember that you can also subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcast or wherever else you listen to your podcast so that you know when a new episode comes in. For my loyal fans who always keep coming back, thank you so much for coming in, and let's get into today's episode. My guest today is Kalonde Chanda, who is originally from Zambia but now lives in Turkey. In this episode, we learned that Kalonde had a variety of career interests as a child, which changed at different stages of his life. Science piqued his interest in his senior year of high school, and his dream of becoming an engineer was born. He goes on to describe his academic journey, including how he was awarded a full scholarship to attend university in Turkey to study process and chemical engineering, where he graduated with honors. We talk about the difficulties of being an international student, as well as the lessons he's learned from these experiences. Furthermore, we talk about Kalonde's other projects and passions, all of which center on his desire to make Africa a better place. Stay tuned for all of this and so much more. Let's go. Hi, Kalonde. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Anne. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm so glad to have you here. So before we get things started, please may you just briefly introduce yourself, where you're based, where you're from, and just short, what are you currently doing before we get into it?
Okay. So briefly, my names are Kalonde Chanda. I am a Zambian. I'm currently in Turkey. I'm working. I recently graduated in chemical and process engineering. And this is basically who I am.
Yeah, I think that's a nice little synopsis before we delve into it. But, before we get into all of that, we have to sort of know you away from the science. So I want to just tap into your mind and, try and figure you out. So let's say, for example, you could be an actor in a series or movie. What series or movie would it be? Who would you play? Who would you play in this series?
I think I have three answers. So the first one has to be Mr. Bean. Yeah, he has to be number one. Rowan Atkinson. Mm-hmm. Then my number two would be a guy in Three Idiots. His name is Rancho. And the last one, probably my favorite, would be Shrek.
Shrek! I love Shrek.
Yeah, it would be Shrek.
Oh my gosh, you've taken me back. Like, what?
Yeah.
That's that movie was absolutely brilliant. Okay, why Shrek? Let's go through all of them.
Why Shrek?
Why Shrek?
I feel you don't really have to have an immaculate physical appearance for you to be yourself, because when you look at Shrek, he's quite a grumpy guy, and I think maybe I have a hot temper a little bit, but you don't really have to be immaculate with your physical appearance. You really have to be comfortable with who you are. And eventually, if you do yourself, I think you'll be rewarded in the end. Just like he was able to get a very beautiful princess at the end of the day. I hope I find my own sometime soon. But yeah.
Oh, is this you advertising yourself at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay, no, the ladies, hint, nudge. Now that they know.
Okay.
I'm joking. Okay, so that's for Shrek. Let's go for the Three Idiots. I'm not sure of this movie, but I would check it out. So why that particular person from that movie?
Firstly, I think I would recommend you to watch it. Though it's Hindi, you have to be reading the subtitles. I think the reason why I love that one, I think in most cases when I'm with my friends, I'm usually the bad influence. I'm always the one who's trying to, create trouble, say, guys, let's do this, or let's try to create commotion somewhere. And obviously, just the madness side. He's really smart, but very, very creative. I think that's the reason why I love it. And, it relates so much in the university, especially in the engineering field, like how difficult it is to be in an engineering faculty, the pressure that's always there, the exams, the quiz, and all like. So it's something really good. I think most guys are able to relate to that movie 100. Yeah.
Okay. So I need to check that movie out. Last but not least, Mr. Bean. Why him?
Mr. Bean is Mr. Bean. He's Mr. Bean.
I mean, I know Mr. Bean. Like, I mean, who doesn't know Mr. Bean? Like, what a brilliant
comedian.
Brilliant guy. So I just want to find out, why? Okay, the comedian part?
No, not really the comedian part. I feel like, I don't feel like Mr. Bean was, he has a perfect way of expressing who he really is, and I think it was very difficult for him because he had tried many times. Like he had auditioned to be an actor, but every single time he was denied the opportunity to do what he really loved. But then he had to embrace himself and do himself. And then he was loved for being himself. I'm certain, obviously, when he tried to audition, he wanted to speak normally and he wanted to hide his, different way of speaking. And obviously, if you're trying to be someone you're not, in most cases, you cannot be immaculate. So when he started being who he was, his mumbling, the way he talks, his weird way of his eyes and his body, I think when he did himself, he was the best version of himself. I think that's the reason why. And also, he was an engineer. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In real life, he's an engineer. Wow, that's so fascinating. And it's pretty profound what you said, actually, about just embracing your quirks and who you are. Because if you pretend to be this version, I mean, there's already somebody who's that, but just the fact that you are your own self and the world needs that. And it's amazing how far he went. Like, for example, Mr. Bean is such an old classic, but my sister, she's 11, she even knows Mr. Bean.
Wonderful.
So that just goes to show that it just transcends so many generations. Like, for example, my parents to me, to, so yeah, just being authentic. And I think that's sort of the message that's coming through with these people who you've chosen, being authentic, being a little bit crazy, and also the engineering aspect and smartness. So you see, we did get to sort of tap into your brain a little bit and figure you out. And with that being said, you speak about how, the smartness and the engineering. I think it's always then important for us to find out for you, your journey, the very, very beginning, the genesis. How did you get to where you are before you became this graduate and you are in Turkey? So can you take us to the beginning? Did you always want to get into science? Was engineering something that you always knew? Or did you just sort of happen to get here?
I think I did not choose to be an engineer. I think the universe chose me to be an engineer because when I was younger, I really wanted to be a lot of things. And, for each stage in my life, like from when I was like in primary school, there was a time I wanted to be a model. And after that, I wanted to be a soldier. After that, I wanted to be the president of Zambia. And after that, when I was like in grade 7 to grade 9, I wanted to be a footballer. Like I was really, really playing football like a whole lot. And then after that, I changed cities. I went to another city for my secondary school. Then I was introduced to debates. And luckily, when I was in my freshman year of secondary school, we won the national debates for Zambia. We also went to the Southern African region for the debates. We came out second. I think South Africa came out first. And from then on, it was just all in with debates. And it was only like when I was in my last year of high school, we have what we call JETS. JETS is like junior engineer, technicians, and scientists. So my teacher told me, would you like to be part of the quiz team? Because he thought that I was smart. That was his opinion. So he tried to put me on the quiz because of how fast you are able to answer questions. So I was picked there. And then from then on, I started, getting interested in science. And then we had an exam. And then we had questions on precipitation. I'm sure you are familiar with that, where you're going to mix these chemicals. And there's going to be one that is going to sit at the bottom. And then you've got the ionic equations. And then you'll be like, why is this one? Why is this spectative ion, And I think I really did well. It wasn't so bad. I think I got 40%.
Okay.
But all the same, I think that's where it all started. And luckily, from then on, it was uh, chemistry and then the debates. And yeah, from then on, I think that's where the science part started, like the genesis. That's where it started.
That's quite interesting to note that, and I personally love it when people also have this whole, oh, it didn't, it only came later because, sometimes you don't always know what you want. And like you said, that for you, you kind of went through a lot of things. Who knows? Maybe you could have been some model at this point.
Of course. You
could have been a model, but I mean, it's quite interesting how things changed, and maybe the fact that your teacher chose you to do this thing, and look at you now where you are right now. Yeah. So after that, when you started doing these things, I take it you started to fall in love with it, and that's when the idea started to become more of a reality, and getting into this field and sort of dropping the other interests, particularly debate, which you said you really liked.
Yeah, but I think it was really, really hard for me. It was super, super hard. Because, when you are in high school, obviously, you're exposed to a certain way of life. And, in my high school, like debate was the number one thing in school, So I never really saw myself to be as an engineer. I thought maybe I might go into economics, or I might be a lawyer, or I might be in the social life, I never really saw myself into the engineering world, if I'm being honest with you. No. I think that was just like a mere interest, the science was just a mere interest. It was only after when I had finished my grade 12, you have that 1 year period where you are not in school, and we call it a school leaver. You become a school leaver, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's in that time when I don't know how spiritual you are. And, I think that's the time when I started developing a relationship with God. And, I started having questions like, who am I? Like, what is my purpose in this life? And I started looking at how best I can be able to be the best version of myself. Then I started finding that in most cases, when I'm thinking about something, I always found myself like much more weighed on the sciences part. And when I had applied for the scholarship, which was here in Turkey, I had applied I think I had 10 options, and chemical engineering, I think, was the fourth, if I'm not mistaken. But when I was picked, surprisingly, they had put me in chemical and process engineering. And from then on, when I came here, there were many more questions. I don't know if we're going to get to that, but then, yeah.
Okay, that's quite interesting. That's quite interesting. So you are right in terms of how it sort of chose you, and like you said, in terms of how one is spiritual or not. We can hear for you that this was sort of like that inner voice, and that inner voice might be God or whoever you believe religiously was telling you that this was the path. And I sort of relate to that in a little bit, because sometimes I also have that little voice in my head, which is really cool. So you mentioned that after you got a scholarship to come to Turkey, so you did your university in Turkey. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, in Turkey.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's why it was,
Okay, that's
clearly.
fantastic. So how was that move? Yeah. How was that move then from Zambia to Turkey? That must have been exciting, or was it scary, or how was that?
Man, I think it was really exciting. But the most difficult part was leaving my friends behind, because when I was in high school, how in most cases when you have your debates and you need to be going to other schools and the like, right? So I had my friends who at times, imagine, they would stay back and would wait for me to come back from wherever I went. Then they would be able to say, no, Kalonde, this is what we had in class. Then they would teach me everything, So they did not necessarily become my friends, but they were a huge part of my life. Like, they were my family. And I wasn't one person who loved social media. I really hated social media, but because of, being away, I had to look at how I can be close to the people that I love the most. And then I had to come here. And, Turkey is, it has a different religion to the one that is back home. And, we're living in a time where there's that prejudice over other religions because of some whatever reason. So I was scared because I was coming to a country which has a different religion to mine. So I was like, what am I going to find there? Am I going to become this? Is there a terrorist and stuff like that? So it was an amazing journey with a lot of questions. I never knew what was going to happen in Turkey till I came here.
Wow, what a journey! That's absolutely fantastic, and I think, like we said, we don't have a lot of time because of the podcast, but I can just tell that you've learned a lot. I think that move was a learning experience, and I think in so many different levels, not only the academic, but I think just you as a person and, all of these things. I think I can sense that probably sort of happened when you moved, right?
Yeah, I should think so. Because obviously, how things happen. There's always something that's going to be related. For example, if you had to put a certain chemical reaction in a certain environment, right? Mm-hmm. There are certain ways it's going to be able to react. When you put it in a different environment, it's going to react faster or slower depending on the environment. So I feel like if I had stayed home, maybe I might not be the person that I am today, because I believe that I am who I am because of where I am, So whatsoever person that you become is highly dependent to the place that you are in. And I feel like me being here, it exposed me to a whole different type of life. And being alone with no family, with no friends that were so close to me, I had to be much more independent. And, it's really hard being away from your family. And that's one thing many people don't understand, because usually when we see our friends who say, no, they've got a scholarship or like in China or Russia, or they've gone to abroad, you really feel like these guys are having the best times of their lives, but that's not really the case, man.
Difficult.
Because when you fail the exams, you don't have anyone to tell you to say, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. Or when something bad happens or you lose a family member, you don't have anyone to mourn with you. Or, there are many things that happen, but you're all by yourself. And I feel like there are many people who struggle with depression who are not with their family back home. Yeah. So it's really not easy. It's really, really hard.
I think that's such an important point that you raised, especially for international students, where we celebrate the fact that they are amazing. They've gotten these scholarship, they are doing these amazing things and going abroad. But just having your center, your people, that's something that we don't really talk about. And even the whole fact of where you are in this new environment, like you said. So there's that sort of imposter syndrome that kicks in, because you might be the only Black person, or you might be the only person of the X religion, or you might be the only person who doesn't understand the language. So there's all of those things, and sometimes even translating them to your family at home, they really can't understand unless they are here. So how did you deal with that? Like, I'm speaking about imposter syndrome, when these things sort of happened and you were by yourself. How did you manage to sort of like overcome that? Because sure, that's a lot.
When you come to a country like Turkey, there are certain areas of Turkey where they're able to speak English. And I think that's like on which one is west, but on the western side, I guess, where like you have Istanbul, Izmir, these cities on this end, they're able to speak English. But there are other cities where like English is almost gold. You can easily find it. So when you come here, like not many people are able to speak English. You have to speak Turkish. Like my education was actually in Turkish, So that was one thing that you had to, fight. You have to learn the language in 1 year. Then after that, go and do your degree. So now in my university, apparently we were the first Africans in my university. So imagine that type of scenario where they haven't seen Blacks at the university, and the teachers, it's the first time that are going to be handling African students. What type of perception do they have about an African? It was really difficult because, when you are exposed to such a scenario, it's not necessarily about you. It's about now sort of representing the people like you, because when they see me, they're not going to say, okay, look at Kalonde. So be like, have you seen what that African did? That type of scenario. So it's really hard because how Africa has been portrayed. We are portrayed to be these poor people. We don't have water. We don't have food.
We
have
live in the jungle.
Man, it's horrible. But you meet people who are well learned. They know about what Africa is, but in certain scenarios, it's terrible. Yeah.
No, I understand. It's quite interesting that you brought up that you had to learn in Turkey and you're the first group. That's like you said, the pressure. But hey, you survived. I'm hoping. I'm sure there were the struggles you survived.
Yeah.
And you are a graduate. You are a graduate in chemical and process engineering. So before, for somebody, even myself actually, who has no idea what chemical and process engineering is about, can you just give us a broad overview in terms of what that actually entails?
It's the best course in the world.
Okay.
For starters. So I don't know if this is going to be the best explanation. Maybe Google has got a good explanation, but from my own perspective, chemical and process engineering, it gives you an understanding of how, industries are run or how a plant is supposed to work, because in most scenarios, like you have a company, let's say they are dealing with oil and there's distillation that is taking place. You need to be able to understand all those type of things. So it's basically a relation with the industrial side of the world, like how you're going to be able to produce goods, or how you're going to be able to start up an industry, something like that. In a nutshell, I feel, because it's similar to chemistry, but it's not really into the industrial field as chemistry is supposed to be. Yeah. And then you have to be able to understand the processes that are in those industries. For example, whatsoever industry, but you have to understand the processes for that specific industry. Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to see if I get it. So let's think, a chemist, right? Because when I think of chemistry, I think chemist. They do reactions. I'm thinking lab, the beakers and whatnot. I think the question then I think is, how is that different? So where is that part where the engineering, what is that engineering part? What does that mean? What would you do, like, as opposed to somebody who is a chemist and they do the chemistry aspect of it? I'm not sure if you understand what I'm trying to say. Like, how do you differentiate yourself from the chemistry people?
Okay. Let me put it this way, right? So let's say you have a chemist who does the chemical reactions, and I think for a chemist, in all the wonderful things that they do, I don't think it is as broad as the chemical and process engineering. Because for us, for example, we have to be able to study the raw materials for whatsoever process that is going to take place. And when we understand the raw materials, we have to look at the best ways in which those raw materials are going to give us the product that we're looking for. And after that, we have to look at what systems are we going to be able to put in place, right? And then let's say we've got the reactors that are going to be responsible for getting the product. We have to be know what type of reactions that are going to take place. But then we have to be able to design the reactors where the reactions are going to be taking place. So we have to look at the perimeters of the temperature, or how long should be the tank, or what type of reactor. Is it going to be a CPSTR, or is it going to be a batch reactor, or all those type of things. And then you're going to be able to look at the safety. You're going to look at the whole process of the production. And then after that, then you'll be able now to look at the economic side of the whole process now. So you'd have to be able to understand, let's say, how much is it going to be able to buy the raw materials, or what type of reactors, or what type of materials, how much is going to cost, and how much are we going to be able to bring in the water, the cooling systems, or what is going to be our heating system, what type of heat exchanger are we going to use, what type of control measures are we going to have, what type of valves are we going to use. So it's a whole type of designing. We have to design the whole process.
Okay.
And we're not going to be looking at one single reaction, but the whole process altogether. So you're looking at from point A to probably point F. But whereas for chemistry, you only have like from point A to point B, but for us, it's like the whole total
Chain.
thing,
Yeah.
and you have to design everything to the nitty gritty. Like every single thing has to be top notch. Yeah.
Okay, no, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, because I now understand where the engineering aspect comes in. It sounds like a lot, actually.
I feel like it's a little bit of a lot.
It sounds like it's a lot. Surely, there could be simpler ways of getting a degree. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so that's so fascinating. So you've finished your you graduated. So now that you've graduated and you are doing this and you got this really amazing skills, which indeed I think as engineers you guys have got really fascinating brains. Like you said that you have to do the whole entire process, the chain. So what are you currently busy with now? What are some projects that you're busy with now? Are you still studying or you're working? Would you mind chatting to us about that?
And luckily, I graduated with a distinction in my course. So some of the companies that were there. Thank you. So some of the companies that were there when we were graduating, they had offered us a place to work, which was lucky for us. And then, one of the reasons, one of the projects that I'm working on, I feel like I don't know if it's the right word, but I'm really hurt at the position that we are as Africans in terms of education, in terms of science, in terms of technology. I feel like there is much that we're supposed to be doing, and look at the industry per se. How many countries in Africa are able to say we have got a car manufacturing industry? How many? And then when you look at that and say how many cars are in Africa, and then you look at that, and then you look at how many cars we're able to, you find that we as Africans are really not doing anything. I wouldn't say anything. We're not doing as much enough to ensure that we are respected in the world of science. I feel like in as much as our fellow brothers are doing well in sport, are doing amazing in music, I feel like we really need to start working on our sciences. So sometime back, I have a company with a few friends of mine. It's not big, it's really, really small. We're planning on creating a competition for some of the students at my former school. So we were giving them like projects, and we're also making like more like a competition for quiz. And then those that are going to be able to win, we're planning to like pay for their school fees.
Wow.
And then there's also the other one where there's something that I'm trying to invent, which I'm not going to say here, but it's related in the world of sport. So in the world of sport, I think you had noticed that fans were not there in the stadiums, right? And then, people missed them, the footballers missed them. So I'm trying to invent something. I think it's already there, but I'm trying to introduce it on another level, especially in football. But then I'm a chemical engineer. I'm not an electrical engineer. So I'm trying to put up a team. And I remember sometime last year, I don't know if you heard of Web Summit. It's a tech conference. It's a tech conference where you're able to give your ideas, and if you're lucky, you're going to be able to get investment. So we had, luckily I was interviewed and I was given an opportunity to go there, but then, lack of funds, then they tell you to say, why don't you talk to the EU? Then you talk to the EU, then they tell you you're not of a European origin, so we cannot be able to fund you, those type of things. So it's been really hard. There are a few projects that me and my friends are working on, but you need money to make money. So it's quite hard. It's quite hard, but there are many other things that we're trying to work on.
Wow, so exciting, actually. Where do I even start? I really like this idea of what you're saying about how you have a company with your friends to sort of give back to the students from your former school. What is that company? For example, what is the name of it so that we can, would you mind sharing that?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's called Interweb Business Corporation. I'm certain you know how a web is, right? A web, spider web. So you know how a web is connected to many other things.
Yeah.
And then the more it's connected, the more it becomes big, right? So basically, my friend, I have wonderful friends. I have Thompson, I have Wembia, I have Faiz, Yabo, Isaac, Gift. There's a whole list of names that I can be able to mention. But there's a tech side where they do the technology side, like let's say coding or making websites or making applications. And then there is the other social side of where you'd be trying to help out in certain other issues and stuff like that. So that's basically what we do now. And we're trying to look for customers to come on board, but it's really, really hard because in as much as, as us Africans, like having a startup is okay, like having a good idea is okay, but then your market, is it ready to pay for what you're trying to give them? That is why you find that most African students or most African guys who are quite smart, they usually don't find it hard to make it in Africa. They find themselves in Europe or they find themselves in America because the market in itself is much more suited to innovation, to technology, because it's quite hard for innovation to grow in a scenario where the environment is not supporting that innovation. So I think you get the idea, right?
No, I understand. That is quite a challenge. But I like the fact that even though that might be the challenge, you are not letting it sort of stop you. Because I firmly believe that as much as you're saying that we are, as Africa, we need to do more, right? And the only way we can do more is by having people who are sort of ahead and who've sort of seen the light to be like, how can I reinvest in Africa? The people on the ground, and the fact that you're able to do this type of work, and I think it's sort of the starting block. I can, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So yes, it's not there. It's not there, but I think it's definitely a long way coming. And also the fact that you are inventing all of this really cool, innovative stuff. That's pretty exciting. I am so excited to hear about what exactly it is. Well, of course not now, but like, who knows, maybe we'll bring you back.
In the future.
We'll bring you back and be like, oh my word, his design was really cool. I don't even know what to say, whatever it is. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
It is. And also just another thing, I loved what you also said about how you're working really close with the people in your network, your friends, and how all of your projects are sort of linking to that. And I think if anybody's listening, they are mighty inspired because you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot. And
no,
you are. I think you need to give yourself some credit, like not some, a lot of credit. You need to give yourself some credit. You're working, like you said, you're selected for passing with distinction, and then you're doing this work back at home and you're inventing. Hey, there's a lot of things coming. I can see it. I can see it.
Why? One of the reasons why I really love having like a close back, especially with the friends and family, because in as much as you would want to aspire for academic excellence, it's only by the people that you love that you're going to be able to make an influence. It's by your family or your friends. There's nothing much more important than this. No achievement can be much better than having people that you really love close by you. And when you're looking at Africa per se, we have been, I don't know if I'm going away from the topic, but the general aspect of what we have been taught in schools in history is that Africans cannot be united, right? Because usually you'd find that every single time when, you look at a documentary, they'll say there are these amount of languages in Africa, or there's this number of traditions, there's this number of cultures. It's almost impossible for these people to be one, And we really have to take time in looking at all those things and looking at how we're going to be able to break the barriers, because it's almost impossible to make a difference, like Zambia on its own, or me on my own, or Malawi on its own, or Zimbabwe, or Nigeria, or Egypt. It's impossible for us to make Africa great on our own. We have to do it together. So it has to start from a small group, right? It has to start with me and my friends, and then my friends are with the friends of their friends, like you and your friends. And then from then on, we can start growing and growing and growing and growing until we make Africa a paradise. Because I feel we have everything. We have all the natural resources. We only lack one thing, which is the human resource part. We don't know how to manage what we have. And because of that, we're poor. And there's no one we can blame. We're poor.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of there's still a lot more work, and but just that, like you said, as long as there are people who are wanting to change the narrative, there are Africans who want to solve African problems by Africans for Africans. So that is really fantastic. I think there's still hope yet. I mean, of course, it's probably not going to happen as fast as we want it.
I think we can do it.
Because of some bureaucracy and policy, politics and whatnot, and that's another whole conversation. But I think the fact that there are people on the ground, there are people who see this vision, who see this vision of a united, a better Africa, so I'm call me optimistic, or Vela, I am very optimistic, but I think we can somehow get there. We can somehow get there, slowly but surely.
For me, I feel like you have already created the spark.
Yeah.
Because, come on, you inviting me on the podcast, right? So you already have a following, right? So if there may be one person who was able to hear the conversation we have, and then they say, okay, I think I really want to make a difference, right? So automatically, that's just one simple fire that has it. And then that other one leads another one, and then everything. It's going to be, I feel it's possible. It's not going to take one generation or two generations. And if you look at how I mentioned my school, my former school, so these are people who are in high school, right? And these are the ones that really need motivation. And these younger minds, they really have to be protected, because that's the wealth that we have. And we have to look at the best ways possible in which they can be better than you, in ways that they have to be better than me, so that they can have a better life than the one we have.
Wow. So profound. I really hope that somebody is motivated and is inspired. And just, we can chat for hours, but, time is going. And while we're on this momentum of inspiring the next generation or the future generation and lighting these sparks and these fires, as we are concluding, I wanted to ask you, what is that one, it could be one or two pieces of advice or golden nuggets that you would like to pass on, given the journey that you've traveled, not only in STEM, but just in life as a whole, for somebody that little takeaway for somebody who's listening?
I feel like the advice that I would give is find time to be who you are. It's okay. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to be depressed, right? You need help. Try and look for people that you're going to be able to help you out, and just be able to embrace your failures, because that's where the greatest power is. Failing is normal. Yeah, you're not going to be the last one to fail. Embrace the failures. Take time in understanding who you really are, your inner power, what's your purpose on earth. If you are a spiritual person, take time to fast and take time to have a deeper relationship with who you believe in. It could be the God of water, it can be the God of trees, it could be nature itself that inspires you. Find time in spiritual or uplifting, enlightening moments that are going to be able to show you who you really are. Because I feel, even in as God, as powerful as he is, he's never going to use somebody's voice to talk to you. He's going to use your own voice to talk to you. And if you don't know who you are, there's a huge possibility that you've not been hearing your creator speak to you. So find time, live away from people for some time, starve yourself from other people and allow yourself to be the best version of yourself, with your quirks, with your failures, with your whatever, but just accept who you are, learn from your failure, and just be you. If you fail, well, stand up, do it again, learn more, and just keep on pushing. Don't give up. Just keep on doing. Just keep on. Yeah.
Wow, I love that. Thank you. But I really hope somebody just leaves from listening to this conversation to be inspired and motivated, and just for you for being so open and honest and sharing your journey. I know we had to condense it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I really, really enjoyed our conversation and the talking points that we had. So thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I think this is one of the best things that have happened to me lately. So I really appreciate the opportunity that you gave. And yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. And yeah, please come back. We want to know about this invention that you've made. You've said it here first. So when it comes out, you must come say it here first as well. So I'm going to keep you to that when we are also on a bigger stage, maybe meeting in person, hopefully the world will be a little bit more open at that time. So I'm going to keep you to that because I'm really quite interested to see the inventions and of course all these other amazing things that you're a part of. And I wish you all of the best in all of your endeavors. Thank you once again. And to everybody else who's tuned in, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Until next time, goodbye.